Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. Now, for the next couple of weeks, everyone will know that we are focusing on seeds. We are focusing on plant and soil health as well, because it is, of course, that time of year when people are thinking about that kind of thing. So I'm delighted to say that we have Padraig Shevlin here now from Plant and Soil Solutions. Padraig, thank you very much for joining us. I guess, what does your company do?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Hannah. I suppose Plant and Soil Solutions was formed a few years ago when I started out on my own, and having worked for a long time in the industry, I suppose I was keen to develop it further. So Plant and Soil Solutions is everything to do with plant and soil, as the company name suggests. So we provide soil testing, detailed soil testing. We provide soil advisory, so we go through different aspects of soil and soil health. And then we do a range of products then to aid and assist crops and improve our soil. So, but it always starts off, I think we all need to start off and have an idea where our starting points are. So that's, I suppose, soil testing your soil, seeing where your nutrient levels are at, and then having a look at your physical soil and
So,
seeing where you're at.
like the last couple of times I've had the soil tested here in our farm, I mean, they do kind of the basics NPK, and then, of course, your pH is very important, whether you need lime or not. But you
Uh-huh.
seem to go into a little bit more detail than that.
Yeah, so we delve into it I suppose in a lot more detail, I suppose. So we break it down. We break it down into all the different parameters. So we break it down into calcium, magnesium, uh,
Okay.
potassium, and sodium. And instead of just taking every soil as being the same, we measure things like cation exchange capacity, which in lay terms is effectively just ability of your soil to hold and exchange nutrients. So as every farmer knows, um, they're all soils are different from farm to farm, from different areas of the country. So rather than looking at it, I suppose, in terms of every soil being the same, we break it down and we look at different factors. So if you're a heavier farm, we look at what the factors are potentially, apart from what comes out of the sky or the type of soil or clay you're dealing with. We look at, let's say, is it high in magnesium, and is that leaving it tighter than it should be? And then we look at all the different trace elements, things like boron, manganese, copper, zinc, iron, molybdenum, and all these other things that people don't maybe give as much, I suppose, as much credit for having a bearing on how our soil
Yeah. But
functions.
it
So
can be like it can be vitally important. I remember a friend of mine actually in Cavan, so not too far away from the Monaghan area, but they were having awful difficulty with their dairy cows, and what they found was there was issues in regards to copper in their soil, but it took them years to figure that out. I know it was kind of the last thing that anyone was mentioned to them. They're trying everything. So it's very important whether you have livestock or whether you have crops as well, to think about those kind of
oh,
the more trace elements, the ones that we don't think about too often.
Absolutely, like, so I suppose, and that's where I find interpretation is so important. People get soil tests done, and maybe they get put in the drawer, or they
Yeah.
think, well, put on a little bit of lime or I'll do something. But and it's also, when we do the soil test we provide, like, we look at all the major elements. So I said, like, your calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, and phosphate and sulfur, and then we look at all the traces, and I do always link them together. So I explain to people, the bearing of, if there's some, let's say, their boron is low or the calcium is high, or how they work together, and looking at iron and the effect it can have on your plant's rooting ability, and copper and livestock, and even copper in terms of cereal crops. So yeah, I break it down, and then I try and give a practical prescription then of what potentially the starting points are and how we can move forward with it.
And in terms of demand for your services, is it a lot of livestock farmers or tillage farmers, and then I guess kind of conventional farmers or organic, I presume as well? And I know this question is too big now at this stage, but I'm presuming as well, given all the impact on fertilizer prices, that you've a lot more conventional farmers coming to you and trying to find some solutions that don't revolve around artificial fertilizer.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, I suppose it's all there's even in the last 12 months, you see, with fertilizer prices, there's been a huge change. But I suppose historically there was always a big demand for this more detailed soil testing in conventional potatoes and cereal crops, because particularly in potatoes and vegetables, because it can have huge bearing on the quality. And then that has grown on into the organic veg and horticultural sectors. But now it's all expanding into dairy, grass, and all different aspects of farming, because you have farmers that have just decided, well, I was spending 3 or 4,000 on fertilizers a year. Now, if I have to spread the same fertilizer, I'm going to spend 10 or 15,000. So they've decided to pull back and really look at it. So we're seeing a lot more farmers maybe that we wouldn't have dealt with a number of years ago come and looking for advice and services, and interpretation. I really come back to, the soil sample is fine, but it has to be an interpretation and a practical plan laid out. That, if you go to somebody with a lot of information and you don't lay out a practical plan that they feel they can follow, well, then nothing ever gets done, and it's of no advantage to anyone. Then so that's what I keep coming back to. Like, but yeah, it's there's definitely we're seeing a huge demand, and I suppose in the livestock end of it, people can be battling, with different mineral deficiencies and whatnot, and I've tried all the different boluses or minerals or whatever, and it all comes back to the soil, and usually, I'm not saying always, but usually there is something that jumps out and says, right, well, that's actually what's causing your issue.
Yeah. And I see on your website as well, you've kind of different products available for farmers. You've got seaweed biostimulants, and there's foliar feeds, there's seaweed meal, there's different things. I mean, what out of those do you find that there's the biggest demand for?
Yeah, well, I suppose the liquid seaweeds and the seaweed biostimulants have I suppose are the most popular. They've always would have been very popular among horticultural growers and cereal growers, because but now it's definitely the grass end of it is a growing market. So but yeah, look, at the products are the next step on. I always say, we've to start and we'll highlight how they all work together, but the likes of the seaweed's all about root stimulation. So it could be a case that your soil structure is poor and you might need to do some aeration in a grassland situation. And then if you come along with your seaweed biostimulant, then you're stimulating that root to make the connection with the nutrients in the soil. So I always do harp on, and it really comes back to the chemical, physical and biological approach to soil. So, we can have all the nutrients we want in the soil, but if we haven't the correct soil structure and the plants don't have the correct rooting structure, well, how are we meant to access the nutrients that are in the soil? So and then the biology then is feeding off all these sugars that the roots are producing and drawing nutrients back towards the plant roots. So it's all very intertwined. So it's not a case of one product fits all, but the likes of the seaweed biostimulant is a very good starting point for anyone that's thinking of trying a product in an organic setting. It's a very good starting point, because it's very universal. It'll work in everything from potatoes, carrots, grass, cereals. It's a very straightforward product that gives a very good result.
And is there, are there any recent projects that you could highlight for us as an example of where this kind of, where this kind of approach has really helped a farmer?
Yeah, well, I suppose if we look at the organic cereal sector, there's a lot of oats now being grown, and I would be working with quite a few organic farmers that maybe were struggling with different nutrient deficiencies and maybe not get the best yield they could. And there's a couple in particular which I won't name, but where we went in with the seaweed, and maybe if there were some areas maybe were really struggling with manganese deficiency, and we combine the two products, and it's very visible then how the crop has come on and evened out, and they're not getting these weak patches in the crop that they traditionally were. And also I suppose in the potato and vegetable growing sector, they're excellent, because they really help with, if you apply a seaweed around what we call tuber initiation in potatoes. So when the potato goes to set its tubers, if you apply a seaweed, then you're feeding the plant a very consistent nutritional plan, and what you'll find is you get a lot more even set of tubers formed, so you don't get all these big ones and small ones and medium size potatoes. So things like that.
I imagine you have a bit of an expert eye as well. So if you're walking in the field and there's a bit of if there's a patch of grass and it's very yellow or something like that, or yellow tipped, you're kind of going, something has to be done on that one, are you?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's all through just experience. And look, I always say, farmers like me on me, they'll ask me, well, what do you think? Well, I where do you think we should start soil testing? Well, I says, every farmer knows their land the best. I've not, I walk onto a farm, I've never stood in the farm. I can't automatically know, You know, so you guide me in where you think your best crops are and where your weakest crops are, and let's pull a test out of each, or let's apply a product in each of them areas and see how we can improve it. Or, you know, you often get a phone call of a crop and it's really struggling, and, you know, we'll go out and sometimes it can be like quite logical, you know, if there's a weak patch, or, you know, you could ask the question, well, is it lime? You know, because a lot of these issues come back like, you know, getting your lime right, getting your soil structure right, you know, well sown is half grown in a lot of cases. So,
And are you nationwide? You know, if someone's listening to this and they're down in Cork, you know, is the services available down there?
yes, for my sins, I am nationwide.
Oh
It
dear.
doesn't make me very popular at home sometimes, but yes, I am nationwide. So, yeah, look, I cover the whole country. I've always have done, and yeah, in most cases we can look after most people in most places. So, unless you're very much on the very far peripheries of somewhere, I can yeah, I get to you.
And I guess finally, where to next? You know, where do you see the next steps in this going?
Look, we're always on the lookout for new and innovative products. That's one of the big challenges, you know. And there's a lot of talk around biological products. The minute I do some biological products, I've had good results with them, but it's such an evolving market. I think there's huge potential there, and we're doing a few little things, little trial projects at the minute, and looking at a few different things on that. So that's very exciting. I suppose the other thing is we're starting to look into different maybe potential methods of advancing the soil testing, and looking at different ways of testing, and developing on into maybe, you know, regularly throughout the season, taking sap analysis and whatnot. So it's constantly evolving. My challenge is to keep finding new things, new innovative things that are a benefit to the farmer. And I suppose that's always a constant challenge, but we keep chasing it.
That's great. Padraig, thank you very much. And if anyone's interested in finding out more about Padraig and the work that he does, the website is www.plantandsoilsolutions.com. So that was Padraig Shevlin there, and we're going to continue now talking about soils and agricultural inputs that you can put in soils, because we're going to be talking to the managing director of FutureAg, Leslie Dwyer. Leslie, thank you very, very much. We've had a rundown, I guess, of what the last company did for farmers, but what does FutureAg do for farmers and do for people in the industry?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, for having me on. FutureAg was set up in 2015. We basically supply a unique range of biological inputs to the agriculture industry, predominantly actually to conventional farms, but increasingly now to organic farmers. The product range that we mainly work with are products that naturally stimulate soil biology, plant biology, and animal biology. So what we're looking to achieve is to restore biological processes in soil by stimulating the native indigenous biology that's there, all that are that being bacteria, archaea, fungi, etc. So by promoting and stimulating native biology, what we're hoping to do is to improve the structure of the soil and bring it to a level where it's sustaining itself over time.
And I guess kind of biological inputs, biological farming, it's become a bit of a buzzword, but for you it's more than a buzzword, and I guess for the farmers that you're working with it's more than a buzzword, and they are seeing results from this.
Yeah, I started, I suppose, I was dealing with farmers in soils about 25 years ago, and really back then there was no great uptake in terms of biological inputs, and I worked in nutrition for 16 years and came back around again in 2013, 2014, looking at this area of agriculture, and could just see the change that was happening, the change that needed to happen. And I went at it full time in 2015. And really the change that we've seen on farms that we're working with has been extraordinary, Hannah. It happens over time. People need to be patient. It's not something that it's not as quick as a fertilizer. But what we've seen is dramatic improvements in soil structure, earthworm activity, water infiltration over 2, 3, 4 year periods, depending on the starting point of soil. So every farm is going to be different. Fields within farms indeed are going to be different. but it's something that takes time, but the improvements are quite dramatic after a number of years.
Now, I guess in terms of kind of the length of time you've been working in this area, how would you rate Irish farmers in terms of having an open mind to this, compared with maybe other countries?
Very good question. I would think myself there's actually quite a bit of resistance in Ireland to it. And a lot of that is probably driven because there is a lot of other actors in the industry advising farmers, and there's quite a big level of trust built up in the system that's there already in the NPK system. A lot of trust is built on the back of that, because it has delivered in terms of production. It has delivered, I suppose, in many ways, particularly in the dairy industry, in terms of profitability. But it has its problems. So there is a battle, I suppose, in a lot of people's minds in terms of what we have learned, and indeed what I have learned over the last 20-25 years from a chemical perspective, and then trying to implement a biological approach without losing production. So I can understand why farmers would be hesitant, but in the last 12 months, 18 months, particularly since the price of fertilizer has rocketed, it has opened, people have opened their minds up to other methods of production outside of the NPK. So in a way, the fertilizer price increases have helped bring other options to the fore, and has helped indeed our businesses in terms of people are more receptive now, Hannah, than they were 12 months ago, much more receptive.
And it's interesting as well reading the testimonials on your website, because it's not just arable farmers or tillage farmers that we're talking about. I mean, there's one person in particular, Thomas Griffin from Timoleague, and he talks about the SCC, and which is really, the somatic cell count, for people who might not be familiar with it, but that's really important for dairy farmers to have a low somatic cell count. And he's saying that it made a difference to his milk working with FutureAg.
Yeah, I suppose we specialize in basically in reducing fertilizer inputs. We're not going to eliminate them for conventional farmers, and particularly where stocking rate is medium to high. And what we're looking to do is optimize the inputs we are using. So we have quite a few farms where we would have reduced nitrogen levels from 250 units back to 120 units over a couple of years, basically using foliar fertilizers, using biological inputs. Probably the single greatest achievement, the one I'm proudest of, is farmers that started working with us back in 2015, farmers like Thomas, that started treating their slurry and biologically improving the slurry, and farmers have stuck with that in the last 7-8 seasons, and have seen dramatic improvements in their soil over time. And that's probably the achievement I'm proudest of in terms of what we've done with the products we've brought to the market.
Like what he seems to be saying is that it just grows, using the products just grows better quality grass. So it's nearly like a nutrient density element to the grass that he seems to have seen.
Yeah, I suppose when nitrogen levels, and we've seen this a lot in the last couple of years, and when we have reduced nitrogen levels through a combination of, at times, foliar fertilizer, and so we could be reducing fertilizer use by 50% literally overnight once they go foliar. What we've seen at farm level, particularly from an animal health perspective, is we've much more settled stock. We have animals that are dunging better. Dung consistency is much better over the whole season, and animals seem to be more content when they're grazing that grass. And then that has knock-on benefits. Like, I visited a client last week that started with us actually the week after Paddy's Day last year, started foliar feeding his grass, and halved his fertilizer, and he says his fertility in the last 12 months has been second to none. They've achieved extraordinary fertility, and a lot of that is down to the lower nitrogen use on grass, because there's no doubt, and I know this from my nutritional background, medium to high levels of grass, you are going to get build-up of nitrates at certain stages of the year, particularly in August and September. And nitrates do have a detrimental effect, even at low levels, on animal health. So anything we can do to reduce the nitrate levels without losing production will have a knock-on benefit in terms of cow health. It isn't always obvious to the outsider, but the farmers themselves do see that.
And when you say foliar treatment, for someone who's not familiar with that, what is foliar treatment?
Yeah, so what we, a big aspect of what we do, Hannah, is we take soluble fertilizers like normal granular urea, and even in an organic context, we can take something like Epsom salts, for example. And that we would basically apply that onto the leaves of the plant so that the leaf absorbs it, as opposed to applying it to the soil.
You're not giving it a big hot, relaxing bath and giving it Epsom salts.
Well, it's a nice cheap way of taking an Epsom bath if you're buying Epsom salts in your agricultural supply store, as opposed to your local health store. But it's the same material. It's magnesium and it's sulfur, and what's good for relaxing muscles is good for increasing magnesium levels and sulfur levels. Something we've seen in a lot of organic farms over the last couple of years, particularly in our multi-species, in our high clover swarts, is where our soil analysis or our plant analysis, leaf analysis, was shown deficiencies in sulfur. An application of sulfur was yielding dramatic improvements in plant growth. And it's often something, it's an element that was missed for a good number of years in Irish agriculture, because we were, I suppose, getting a lot of sulfur from rainfall, but industries have been cleaned up and sulfur was lacking. And an application of sulfur in the right circumstances can yield dramatic improvements in plant growth. And sulfur is needed for protein synthesis. So whether you're organic or not, sulfur is a crucial element in terms of production. Over the next 12 months, are you expecting a rise in the number of inquiries from organic farmers, or do you think conventional farmers will still be the main, will probably be the main port of call? From our own business, it will. We are seeing, even from trade shows, like we've attended a couple of trade shows since the start of the year, and we have seen an increase in the number of inquiries from organic farmers and organic farmers that are looking to basically, I suppose, a lot that have switched from conventional systems, Hannah, and are looking to I suppose, optimize their soil health and to keep production at certain levels, to make sure that their indexes are staying reasonably good, that their production doesn't slip over time. And we have seen a big increase in inquiries from those, but the majority will probably remain the conventional farmers that are looking for alternatives now to hold production, but make sure that they're falling in line with legislation that has come in and what's coming down the line in terms of the fertilizer register. Okay. Well, Leslie, thank you very much for that. And if anyone wants to find out more information, Leslie's website is www.futureag.ie. But you have, of course, been listening to Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. And if you want to find out more information about organics, you can visit their website, www.irishorganicassociation.ie. But from all of us here, thank you for listening, and we will see you all next week.